So I don't know what's going on these past couple days, but now I've been getting a lineup of cars to work on. Uh, this past Saturday, we worked on Gustavo's Volkswagen Passat V6, and then we just went and picked up a E92 project car to fix up and flip. And then my friend's dad on this 335i 2009 wanted me to get his car up and running again. So on this one, on today's episode of BMW, this is a 2009 335i coupe, no start. My buddy's dad has said he's already replaced the battery, supposedly, and he thinks it's the alternator. We have alternator here that came in yesterday. There's the alternator, and this is the project for today. The alternator is right underneath the airbox, and so we're going to do a little step-by-step on how to change your alternator on a 2009 335i BMW. So I'll pick up the camera again and explain what all needs to come off and start moving forward. And I'll tell you what sockets and tools or anything that you're going to need. All right, guys. So before get into any further, this is the stock airbox. Stock airbox will come off this little intake pipe. It just pops right off. Then there's little grommets, like right here. Let me see if I can get the light. Little grommets, like this one right here, that the airbox just sits in. And then at the back of the airbox, as you follow this pipe to back here, there is a little pipe that's connected to the airbox. It has a little 7mm clamp on it. So I'm gonna get that socket, loosen the clamp off to get the airbox out, and then you'll be freed up to the alternator. The car is dead, obviously. Replacing the alternator, go in the back, pop the trunk, and disconnect the battery just so you don't shock yourself. In this purpose, this car is dead. I'm gonna go disconnect the battery here in a second. But other than that, removing the airbox and getting closer to replacing the alternator, and then I'll show you the big T-socket that you're gonna need to pull on the tensioner to remove the belt off the alternator, and then what sockets you're gonna need to remove the bolts on the alternator itself. So now that we got the airbox off, there's the pipe. This one is actually a 6mm clamp to loosen up. And then here on the charge pipe, we have one that's actually a 7mm clamp. But there's bad news on this car. The owner of this car has let the car sit for I don't know how long, honestly. But it's gotten to the point where the stock charge pipe has dry rotted. These fittings have snapped off, and I want to say that's probably one of the reasons for his rough idle when he does have the car running. So all the air escaping, not enough air, vacuum leak, boost leak, everything to be part of this situation instead of like a bad spark plug or something. So I'm gonna have to let the owner know that he's gonna need a new charge pipe due to the fact that these two fittings have snapped off. But to remove the charge pipe, it's pretty much take this little spring clip off, you just lift it up and then undo that clamp, this clamp right here, and it comes right off. And then to get to the bottom 2 bolts of the alternator that's just underneath, and these bolts are 13 millimeter. Then the battery cable that goes on the alternator is also either a 12 or 13, and then you have the sensor, which is just underneath the battery cable right down here. And once you get that unplugged and have the belt removed, which I'll let you guys know in a second what T fitting or Torx fitting it is to pull back on the tensioner. And then we'll show you comparison from this alternator to this alternator. Here's a comparison of the old one that just came out and the new one that we're just about to put in. Obviously this one is covered in grease and oil, and hopefully this one's just fried, and we're gonna put this new one in to charge the new battery in the cart. All right, so got the old alternator out. So 213s go here on the top, then 213s here on the bottom. This is your alternator sensor connector at the bottom. So come to realize on the 335i, the alternator bottom sits in this little pocket. And that being said, becomes more complicated to get out, because you literally have to, once you loosen it, you literally have to wiggle it towards the firewall. But then at the same time, you have to loosen the intake plenum, which is one 11 millimeter bolt with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 11 millimeter nuts. So the bolt is literally your first one, and in between all these gaps are all your nuts. Loosen it, and your intake manifold is loose. Wiggle it up just to give you just enough clearance to squeeze the alternator out. And then now you just go in reverse order and put everything back and connect everything. And then on this car, we have to make sure that the battery's charged, and then make sure that the alternator actually does charge the battery. But I told the owner he's most likely going to need a battery. But that concludes on today's video on replacing a 335 2009 BMW alternator. Stay tuned for the next, because we do have a 2008 335i that we're going to be doing quite a bit of work on. Fuel sending unit, brake pads, what else? Engine filter, cabin filter, oil change, etc. But that's on a whole different 335i. So stay tuned for that video. It may be multiple videos on it, doing 1 repair or 2 repairs at a time. But that car will be up for sale once it's done. We're going to do a little bit of cosmetic changes, but stay tuned for that video. But that concludes this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe, please. And we'll see you on the next one.